Welcome to the importance and power of reading. I'm Michelle, the computer lady, your host. During some awful dark times in America, Black people were denied the ability to read, to learn how to read, to write, or to even own books. And that has hampered our communities up until this day. Now we're going to have important conversations about the importance and power of reading. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the importance and power of reading. I'm your host, Michelle, the computer lady. I have a phenomenal guest. This man is outstanding, the work he's been doing, and I can't wait to introduce everybody. Welcome, my good friend, Richard Hellen. Richard, how you doing?
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I am outstanding.
So, Richard, do us a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, and some of the work you do.
Yeah, I'm from a little small town called Meridian, Mississippi. It's about 87 miles east of Jackson. And if you know anything about the South, from an economic perspective, there's not a lot of opportunity. So maybe 3 to 4 years after high school, I joined the Army. And in the Army is where I got the leadership bug. And so when I retired from the military and I joined corporate America, I realized that leadership was absent to no fault of their own. They hadn't been taught how to lead. And so in 2016 or so, I became a John Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, coach, and author with the intent to help businesses, to help people, help parents learn how to lead better and more effectively. So my business consists of about 4 verticals. I teach people how to lead more effectively. I teach people how to be able to communicate, whether it be from a stage or whether it be from a platform like this. How do you communicate effectively so you can connect to people? So leadership development, communication, sales, and just individual coaching. And so my whole goal in life, Michelle, is really to impact people so that they can impact people. I just believe that no matter how great I become, if I don't make you great, then I've failed in life. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Man, I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, Richard, let's dive into a few questions. Did you like reading when you were little? Did you like reading as a child?
Absolutely not. Because reading was not encouraged by my parents. And so I never saw my parents read. Reading was not necessarily something that was encouraged by my teachers. So we had reading assignments in school where you had to read a certain book like Moby Dick. But I read when it was necessary, not necessarily because I wanted to read, because I wanted to learn and grow. And so as a kid, I wasn't encouraged to read, so I didn't.
So, since you weren't encouraged to read, how did you overcome the barriers that goes along with not reading as well or reading as much as you need to?
That's an interesting question. Usually, when we make a drastic change in life, it's normally because of some failure. And so, in 96, I went through a divorce, and it wasn't because I was a bad person or that she was a bad person. I never had an example of what a husband was, and she never had an example of what a wife was. And so that encouraged me to purchase my first book, which was entitled Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And I began to learn what it looked like to have a successful relationship. So failure was my springboard to start reading.
Wow, what a great way to turn, as they say, lemons into lemonade. Great
Yes,
story and a
ma'am.
really good book. Now, I know that you weren't pushed to reading, but did you have a favorite book when you were little?
No, I didn't have a favorite book. Matter of fact, now that I think about it, I can't think of any books as a child that I read other than like The Time Machine and Moby Dick. Things that were part of a school assignment where you had to read. And so, but I didn't necessarily have a favorite book.
Well, because as kids, besides having to have assignments, didn't know if you like read comic books, magazines, other things that piqued your interest as a kid.
I didn't read a bunch of comic books either. I was a very active child, so I spent most of my time outside playing sports. So I wasn't a big comic book guy.
even though you spend most of your time outside, because that's what happens with a whole lot of boys. I got four brothers. That's their life is outside.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Richard, do you have kids?
Yes, I have. I have three children.
So, how did you help your kids read, and what are the things that did to help them be good readers and be successful on the reading journey?
That's a, that's a really good question. I just believe as a parent, we set the platform, we set the climate, and we set the culture for what our children do. I don't think nothing in our culture is a result of the children. I think everything we see in our culture with our children is a result of parenting. So if my children see me reading, because I am the influencer in their life, they will read. So I am a firm believer that you pay children to read and you thank them for doing their chores. And so that's how I influenced my kids to read, was that they saw me reading. I led the example.
Now, that's very succinct. So, when we talk about modeling our reading habits so our kids can see us, did you also read to your children as well?
Not when they was younger, because I wasn't into reading when they was younger. I got into reading as I got older. So my son was maybe 12 or 13. That's when I started encouraging him to read as well as I was reading. But I didn't do it when I was younger because I was oblivious to the benefits of that for them as children. So yeah, it started later on in life.
Now, what are you reading today? Because you talked about women are from Venus and Mars are from men as a way to open your eyes to some things. But what are some of the books that you're reading today that have worked towards your success or that you
One
like
of
in
my
your leisure?
one of my favorite books, or one of my favorite authors, is John Maxwell. Maybe because I'm a John Maxwell certified speaker training coach, and so he just wrote a book on communication. I'm probably the last chapter of that book, and it just talks about how to be effective. I mean, everybody can speak, like I'm speaking right now, but it takes something different to hold someone's attention. And so the book talks about what it takes to be successful as a speaker, where you hold someone's attention when they leave whatever the event was you were speaking at. They leave and something was added to them, value was added to them. How do you actually do that? So that's what I'm currently reading now, a book on communication.
So that is awesome. Now, do you have some other books that you've been reading that you would like to share with everybody?
Yeah, most of my books are all leadership based. And so one of my favorite books is the 21 Laws of Irrefutable Communication I'm sorry, 21 Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. I've also written three books. All my books are leadership based. No matter what the title of the book is, it's really a leadership book. And so my last book is entitled "If You Lead, People Will Follow." And the reason that I decided to write that book, if you are going to lead someone, where are you taking them? And so if someone is oblivious to where you're taking them, why should they follow you? And so I just want to teach people what leadership really looks like from a practical perspective, whether it be in your home, whether it be in your business, or whether it be in your church. And so the book that I'm currently writing is entitled, ooh, I love this one. It's the hardest book I've ever written. It's entitled, Don't Raise Your Children, Lead Them. See, everybody raises their children, right? And when I mean by raise your children, I mean you provide food, water, shelter, clothing. You do the basic fundamental things you should do as a parent, which is awesome. But when you lead your children, you're doing things today that's going to benefit them tomorrow. That's powerful to me. You're putting things in place today that's going to benefit them tomorrow. So you're conscious about what you're doing so that when they leave the nest, they can be successful. And so, but yeah, 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership. My last book was entitled "If You Lead, People Will Follow." Stephen Covey has written a lot of books that I really love. Simon Sinek has written a bunch of books I love called, one he's written it that's really powerful. It's called Start With Why. Not what you do, but why you do it. So those are some of the books that I recommend to people. Start With Why, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell, and any book by Stephen Covey. Uh, I think will be beneficial to people.
Wow, such powerful authors. And the fact that you've authored several of your own books, that's amazing. Well, we got to take a small commercial break. And we're going to be right back with the epic and the author, Richard Hellen, on the importance of power of reading. Stay tuned. Are you a company, business, or service that believes in social responsibility? Would you like to make a positive impact? You can. You can sponsor this program and be seen by 2 million viewers on the PIC TV network. Call 770-367-1268 for more information today.
Since 1877, Jackson State University has been training students for a life of service and leadership to impact our global society. Ranked among the best HBCUs in the country, Jackson State University offers 47 undergraduate, 37 master's, 1 specialist, and 13 doctoral degree programs. Whether you're interested in the arts, education, public health, the sciences, or business, we're here to take you from ready to JSU ready. Visit jsums.edu and apply today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the importance of power of reading. I had an amazing, a very dynamic guest, author Richard Hellen. He's talking about how reading has helped him in his career and how he's helped his children be successful by making sure that they have books in the home and that they read. Richard, now, do you remember what age you started reading?
Vividly, yes. I was about 27. That's when I went through my divorce, and that's when I started reading. By 27. I was a late bloomer.
That's okay, because the one thing about starting and about knowing, hey, I need information and knowing how to get it. And if that motivates you, that's amazing. Because there are folks all over the world that either they didn't have an example or
Right.
wherever they were, whatever they were doing, they came to it late. But it doesn't matter because now you're on that plane and nobody can take you off of it.
I concur.
So now let's talk about reading as it impacts your life and your journey. How has reading helped you become successful as a professional, as a father, and in your careers and business?
I think anything you want to know is actually written in a book. It's if you want to hide something from a man, place it in a book. So once you start reading, it opens up doors in all different types of places for you. So the only reason that I have a consulting business and I can charge people an enormous amount of money to speak with me is because I read and they don't. That is the only reason I have a consulting business, because I read and they refuse to read. And so it has allowed me to get in doors that I could not have gotten into if I have not read. And so it's been made monumental in my parenting. It's been monumental in me starting a business. It's been monumental in every aspect of my life, because once you begin to read, you begin to approach things from a different perspective. So I gave someone an example a couple of days ago that when my children were young, Saturday was family night. And so we would sit down on the couch and watch how powerful this is. We would sit down on the couch as a family. And I would have all the kids gather around me and I would say, how is daddy doing leading the family? And I would just be quiet. That gave them the opportunity to speak truth to power, because our children are going to talk and they're going to communicate. As a parent, I have to decide who I want them to talk and communicate to. So I would prefer that they talk to me before they talk to their peers, because I'm going to give them some sound wisdom, whereas their peers are going to give them not sound wisdom. And so as a leader, I have to create the platform for that. Now, I didn't come up with that on my own. That came because I started reading books. And it let me know that as a parent, I need to seek, or as a leader, period, I need to seek feedback. Not wait for somebody to give it to me, but I need to be the one to be proactive and ask, how can I be better as a leader, as a speaker, as a minister, as a father? And you don't get that unless you get feedback. But I learned that from reading. And that allowed me to be effective at parenting. So now my children, no matter what the situation is, they come to me first before they go talk to someone else. The people that I lead at work come to me first before they go talk to someone else. Why? Because I created the climate, I created the culture to where it was safe to speak truth to power. I learned that from reading. Yeah, I got that from reading.
Oh, that's what blesses my soul. Because when we know the power of words, when we know the power of not only speaking words, but the comprehension and using those words in order to manifest our destiny, that's where we need to meet. So thank you so much for that, Richard.
Preach.
Now, as the father of boys and girls, and we know that boys like you, like my brothers, always wanted to go out and play. How have you been able to kind of quiet your sons' minds and say, hey, let's reel you back in for a minute. And this is why reading is important. And this is why I need you to be successful for your life, not for mine, but for your life. How were you able to instill that in your sons?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm retired from the military. I'm retired from the Army, and I spent 23 years in the Army. And if you know anything about the military, whether you've been in it or not, one of the things that most people know is that the military is very structured. Each and every day is structured. In the mornings, you get up at 5:30. You report to the unit at 6:30 in the morning. You do physical training for an hour. You got an hour and a half to take a shower and clean up. You report back to work at 9 o'clock. It's regimented like that every day. Well, because I'm military, and not only did I join the military, and I got into the military got into me. And so as a parent, I believe in structure. So not have your kids to where they're robotic, but from this time to this time, we're going to read, right? We're going to sit down with family from this time to this time. And you create that type of structure to where it's repetitive on a daily basis. And to me, that's how you infiltrate that into the culture of your home. You set aside time for that, where it's not, it's mandatory that as a family, we do these things. And so that's what made it easy for me. You just make it where this is what we're going to do as a family. This is how our family's going to operate. Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with setting aside time every day to read, to spend time as a family, and to make sure that your kids have that structure. My parents were military as well. My dad was in the Navy for 27 years. So I grew up with structure. But my mom was my influence for reading. My sister, my godmom. My dad read the comics to me, but he didn't read like books to me. But I'm a daddy's girl. So everything daddy did, I did. My dad would read the newspaper every day and find out events from around the world. And even though he didn't graduate from high school, because back then they didn't have high school, but he was reading that paper every day. And that was a sign to me that I needed to be reading every day. So really, really salient points. Now, what are some of the things that you would suggest that parents do in order to make sure that their kids read well, make sure that they comprehend so they're successful in their life's journey?
I read an African proverb probably 15, 20 years ago. You know how every now and then you hear something and it makes an indelible mark in your heart? And it's an African proverb that says this: one who does not read is no better off than one who cannot read. So me, that's the baseline. That's the baseline where it starts. One who does not read is no better off than one who cannot read. So if I start and that's my baseline, then I am going to emphasize that with my children. And so that's where it starts for me. And so if our children, like I mentioned earlier, can see us being the catalyst for reading, can see us leading the forefront in reading, then because we have influence with them, 9 times out of 10, at some point they're going to want not only just read, they're going to want to read because they see their daddy reading. And watch this. And when they can see their daddy reading, and they can see the results of that, oh man, that's extremely encouraging. Yeah, so it starts with us as parents. I think everything starts with the parent. Getting a parent to be involved in these things for us, reading and economics with our children, and finances with our children. And then if we can do that with them, yeah, they kind of follow suit.
Now, I concur succinctly with that answer because I know when we're not reading, when we're not modeling, when the kids don't see us read, they're like, why should I do that? Even though they can't see what we do at work. But when we're at home, if we're modeling those types of behaviors, when we're, making those types of activities where they're learning and they learn the power and they hear us articulate, they hear how we speak, they know the importance and power of reading. All right, we got to take a little commercial break, and we're going to be right back with my guest, author Richard Hellen, on the importance and power of reading. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Michelle the Computer Lady, author and children's book publisher of the Mommy Readers Collection series of books. Well, we know how important it is for us to read, but we also know how important our public hospitals are. We're here in Atlanta. My public hospital is Grady. They saved my life. And I would like to give back, and I need your help to do so. I've created a new fundraiser called Building Towards Our Future. And what's going to happen is we're going to make sure, you and I together, that Grady keeps on serving the marginalized, the poor, and the indigent in the Atlanta metro area. All right, stay tuned for more announcements. I'm going to be telling you how real soon. Thank you for joining me in this fight to make sure that we can live with Grady.
Welcome back to the importance and power of reading. I have an outstanding and phenomenal man, author Richard Hellen, and he was talking about how we model for our kids, how we get our kids to make sure that they're reading, and that is a habit. He's got an hour that he set aside for his boys when they were little and his girls, that this is our family time, this is when we read, to make sure that they're successful in their lives. Now, Richard, let me ask you, what do you think the state of literacy is among our little children, our adolescents, and even our adults? And if we're not where we should be, how can we get there as a culture?
That's a pretty deep and profound question. Um, I think the state of literacy in our culture has declined significantly. And so you're like me. I'm pretty sure you're out in the public on a frequent basis. And I'm just amazed at the age in which we introduce our kids to cell phones, and the age we introduce our kids into technology. And so our children are being raised now by the internet. And I think that's devastating to our culture. I mean, I go into a grocery store and I see a kid that's a year old. They give him a cell phone and he has games and different things he's playing on it. But we're not teaching our kids the importance of reading. And that's devastating to our culture. But I'm going to circle back to what I said earlier. The culture and the climate of our children starts with the parents. So I cannot teach somebody to be something or to do something that I am not. It is difficult to teach somebody to be or to do what I am not. So it starts with me knowing and understanding the power the power of reading. And if I understand the power of reading, I am going to allow my kids or create a culture or an environment where my kids are encouraged to read. Or if not, we're going to continue to allow the internet to raise our children. And I just think it's just devastating what we are right now in our culture. So we got to try to fix that. Now, am I sure how to fix that? No, but I do believe it starts with the parents. We have to somehow reach these parents. And whatever example the parents set will be what the kid, I think it's interesting. This is kind of off topic, but it relates to the point. Whenever there's a tragedy in a community, let's say a man did something to a child he wasn't supposed to do. Ironically, they go back into that man's childhood And do you know, like 99% of the time, that person was molested as a child themselves. And so now they perpetrate that onto to other children or to their children. And so when we can do things as a parent, normally 9 times out of 10 on a positive note, it infiltrates into our children's lives. So I just think it starts with the parents. If we're not doing these things as parents, we just can't teach somebody to be and to do something that we're not doing. But it starts with me. We got to find a way to get the parents involved. You're probably in the school system like I am. When my son was in school, from the time that he started going to school, I would go to school twice a month and just sit in his classroom. He didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to support him and tell him that I love him. And you see the things that take place in the school system to where parents are not supportive of the children. Matter of fact, the teacher stopped me one day and she said, "Are you so and so sad?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "I just want you to know there's 2,000 students in this school." She said, "I have 5 parents that come to the school to see their child and nothing is wrong." I start crying. It starts with the parent. We have to find a way to get parents engaged in their children's lives. And then once we do that, I think everything else will be a byproduct of that.
Richard, you said a mouthful. I totally agree with you. And that's one of the reasons that we're having these conversations, because a lot of times parents work and we know that people are struggling right now. They've been struggling since we were growing up. But as parents, even as grandparents, as aunts and uncles, we have to get involved in what our children learn. We have to be supportive. And parents, you're going to have to take, an hour off, one of those lunch breaks, come by the school and see what's going on. Because if your kids know that you support them, as Richard said,
Mm,
they know it begins with you. Their success is modeled around how much you
yeah,
support them and what you do. Everybody's busy, everybody, but make the time to make sure your children know that they're important and they know
yeah.
the importance and power of reading. Now, Richard, let's talk about science, technology, engineering, and math. The one thing about STEM is now and it's the future. STEM was NASA, STEM is NASA today, but STEM is also around us. How do we get our kids interested in these fields for their success and their growth?
Man, that's a deep question. Uh, I think the earlier we can begin with our kids from kindergarten, I think that's where it starts, getting them interested in those topics in the STEM program at the earliest age possible. And I think if we begin there, we can have some success in those areas. And then the second part of that goes back to what I said earlier. They have to see the parents modeling that. But if we can get them involved in technology and those STEM programs at the kindergarten level, it makes it easier to implement those things as they begin to progress through school. But if we can start early, I think that's where we can have some success at. Start as early as we can with our children.
Oh, absolutely. They need to see it. And if you live in the Southeast, we have the space station right there in Alabama, in Huntsville. You can go down to
Mm-hmm.
Keesler Air Force Base, take a ride so they can
All right.
see these things, so they can see them. But let's talk about everyday STEM. Just the act of using our fingers, running, is part of STEM, it's part of our biology. How we breathe, another act of STEM. If you're in there making a snack, how microwaves work, that's part of STEM. What's your oven? Ovens are part of the RTOS system. There are different things that you can look up to engage your kid. If you got a young man or young woman that likes to take stuff apart, they might be interested in robotics and
Right.
or learning computers. We have to make sure that we're paying attention to what they're doing, but also introduce them to STEM in little ways. STEM is creating a book. You got to know your measurements. You got to know your math. You got to know how printing works, electricity, electronics. There's so many different things. Even carpentry. All of
Right.
that is STEM related. Science,
Right.
technology, engineering, math. There's the technology to creating wood blocks, to creating studs, to creating plywood. So all these wonderful things that we can do to help get them interested. Now, Richard, do you believe in giving children dictionaries and having books in the home in order to spur their reading and to help them with their vocabulary and their language?
Yes, indeed. Of course. I can't remember what book it was when I started my reading journey, but it indicated one of the indicators of successful people was that every successful person house that he went into, they all had a library. He said every successful person that he knew, when he went into the house, they had a library of books. They was constantly being inundated with information so they can grow and they can be better. Now, here's what I know and understand about growth. Growing people grow people. If I'm not growing, I can't grow the people that's around me. So yeah, man, I think every household should have a library of books. And a plethora of different type of books. Most of my books are leadership, but they could just be any books. It could be fiction, it could be nonfiction, it could be self-help books. Just a plethora of books that we can have our children to be inundated in, man. And I think if we did that, we'll see a different outcome with our children. And then the last thing I say is this: when it comes to the STEM program, if you look at, and I don't know the statistics, I have never looked them up. If you look at the average college students that enter into college their first year, what percentage of African Americans enter into like a STEM program where you're doing engineering, where you're doing something that deals with a lot of math or science, as compared to white people to Asian people? And I bet you if we did the numbers on that, it's extremely different. It's drastically different, right? You very seldom meet someone like me or that looks like you. It happens, but they have an engineering degree, you know, or something like that. So we got to get them early as possible to where they're being inundated in math and science, so that stuff is not foreign to them when they get to the sixth grade. By the time they get to sixth grade, it's not too late, but it's just more difficult if we haven't inundated them at an early age with math and science. Yeah.
Richard, that's absolutely correct. Now, I want you to tell everybody about your three books that you authored, where they can get them, and how they can reach you if they want to hear you come or you want them to come to your organization to speak.
You can reach me at my website, which is my first name and my last name, so richardhellen.com. Any information you want to know, and all the things that I do is actually on my website. My email address is rehellenpathways@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on almost every social media platform. So I am actually pretty easy to get in contact with. And so my three books are, my first book was called Leadership in Life and Love. And I love that book because it talked about, well, this is just so powerful to me. It talked about the theme of the whole book was life is not about what you go through, it's what you grow through. So don't tell me what you're going through. Everybody going through something. What are you going through? And then the second book was entitled Marriage and Relationship Success is Intentional. You don't have a great marriage by happenstance. A great marriage is intentional. So what are some things that we can put in place from a leadership perspective where we can have a phenomenal marriage? Where when someone asks you, are you married? Like when someone said, Rich, are you married? I said, no. They said, but you have a ring on your finger. I said, I'm happily married. That's a different category. That's a different category. Everybody can say that they're married, but can you say emphatically that you're happily married? And then the last book that I wrote is entitled, If You Lead, People Will Follow. What can you put in place today that will make people want to follow you tomorrow? And how can you make people's lives better today so their life will be better tomorrow? What can you put in place? So those are my three books. They're all on Amazon. I think they're pretty inexpensive. I think the most expensive will be $17. Around between 14 and $17. And so you can find everything that I do is actually on Amazon. So I look forward to hearing from you.
Wow, that is amazing. Richard, thank you so much for blessing me with your time.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
having me.
much for explaining to folks the importance and power of reading. And thank you so much for pouring into our parents some of the ways that they can help their children be successful on this journey.
Thanks a lot.
That was author Richard Hellen, phenomenal husband, veteran, and an author. And he's talked to us about not only how we can model for our kids, but the importance and power of reading. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us.
Black life, Black inspirational stories, education, luxury, health features. Welcome to the new Black television, Pick TV network, where being in the black is luxury, it's accountability, and it's seeing what you look like in the new face of television. Pick TV network, come join us. You know what's going on in our society, book banning, and over 38 million children don't have books in their homes. Join me for some exciting segments as we talk about the importance and power of reading with my guest on the Pick TV network, channel 1000.